I never imagined that a chance encounter with a heartbroken waitress would change my life forever. I will never forget the day everything fell apart. It started like any other mundane Tuesday. The rain pattered against my window like a gentle drum, but inside me, a different storm brewed. I felt heavy, defeated. My heart was a wilted flower, struggling to find sunlight that I stumbled into a small diner, desperate for comfort, a cup of coffee to numb the edges of my pain. The bell above the door jingled, the sound sharp and inviting. I shivered as I crossed the threshold. The air was thick with the scent of greasy burgers and burnt toast. My hands trembled as I wrapped them around a steaming mug, warmth spreading through my fingers, but it did little to chase away the cold in my chest. Then, I saw her. She stood behind the counter, leaning against the stainless steel, looking lost. Her name tag read Lila, but the scrawled letters seemed to echo a deeper sorrow. Her bright blue eyes were glassy, glistening like raindrops on a slanting roof. I could see the slight tremor in her hands as she poured coffee, shaking like a leaf in the wind. I felt an inexplicable pull toward her, as if the universe had stitched our fates together in an invisible thread. As I watched, she looked up, and our eyes met. In that moment, a jolt of electricity surged through me. There was something unsettling yet magnetic in her gaze, like the calm before a storm. I recognized that pain. It mirrored my own, a dark shadow lurking just beneath the surface that I learned later that she had loved fiercely and lost, her heart shattered by betrayal. The whispers of her tragic story hung in the air like the thick fog outside. I wanted to know her. I wanted to reach through that fog and pull her to safety. But how could I help someone when my own heart felt like it was barely beating? Each time I returned to the diner, I found myself diving deeper into her life, her struggles. Lila opened up slowly, like a flower unfurling at dawn. I could hear the cracked edges in her voice, the way she tried to smile but failed to hide the hurt. Her laughter was a faint melody, echoing against the clatter of plates, tinged with bitterness. The more we talked, the more I realized I was falling for her, not just her beauty, but for her soul. She was broken, yes, but still fighting, still breathing, still reaching for rays of light. Then, everything shifted in an unexpected twist. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, she looked at me with intensity. Her eyes held a secret, a silence that screamed at me, a labyrinth of untold stories. "There is something I haven't told you," she whispered, leaning in closer, her breath warm against my skin. My heart raced. What could it be? A revelation? A confession? I could feel the air thickening, wrapping around us like a fog, suffocating yet intoxicating. And just then, the bell jingled again, cutting through the tension like a knife. A man walked in, his energy dark, his presence overpowering. Lila's face paled, and suddenly, that spark of connection felt as fragile as glass. In that moment, questions flooded my mind. Who was he? What did he want? And what secret had Lila been hiding? I could sense her fear, her vulnerability. Whatever it was, it threatened to shatter everything, including my heart, if I couldn't protect her. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The man lingered by the entrance, his eyes scanning the diner with a predatory glint. I felt an instinctive knot tighten in my stomach, a primal urge to shield Lila from whatever darkness he brought with him. Her gaze darted toward the coffee pot, her fingers trembling as she tried to steady the hand that poured another cup. This time, it splashed over the edge, staining the counter like the fear spreading across her face. "Is everything okay, Lila?" I asked, my voice barely breaking the tension. I took a step closer, feeling the need to be her fortress when she seemed so fragile. She forced a smile, but it cracked like ice beneath too much weight. "Just a long day," she said, but her eyes betrayed her, skimming back to the man who was now approaching us, a slow predator creeping toward its prey. "Lila," he called out, his voice low, smooth as espionage dangerous. My heart thundered, radiating a pulse of warning through my veins. "Don't," she whispered, a slight tremor in her voice. The subtle plea resonated through me, yet I couldn't back down. "Who is he, Lila?" I pressed, holding my ground, my resolve hardening. "What does he want?" She opened her mouth, but the words seemed trapped, caught in her throat like a fish in a net. The dark figure moved closer, his shadow swallowing the light between us. I was ready to confront him, to drag Lila out of the storm brewing around us, but just then, a familiar voice cut through the tension. "Hey, Sam." It was Maggie, a kind-hearted waitress from a diner down the street. She had seen me in moments of raw vulnerability as I sat with my swirling thoughts after long days at work. Her reassurance was a balm, my anchor amidst the chaos. "What are you doing here?" I asked, thankful for the abrupt distraction. Maggie's warm smile seemed to lighten even the darkest corners of the diner. "Just grabbing a slice of cherry pie before my shift. I saw you from outside." She glanced at Lila, her eyes softening. "Hey, Lila. You still hanging in there?" "Trying," Lila replied, forcing a smile. "I brought some of those brownies from the bakery. You know, the ones with the chocolate drizzle." Maggie dug into her tote and pulled out the sweet treats as if she were offering a lifeline. "I thought you could use a little pick-me-up." In that moment, the tension in the air wavered, if only slightly. Lila reached for the brownie, her fingers shaking as she held the small piece of hope. "Thanks, Maggie. You always know how to brighten my day." Maggie winked, glancing at me, gauging the unspoken heaviness hanging between Lila and the man who had not yet moved away. "You two should come to the open mic night tonight. It might help take your mind off things." "Maybe," I said, but my gut twisted with the knowledge that whatever lingered in the shadows would not easily be left behind, even in a light-hearted space. I could see Lila's thoughts swirling, the tension behind her smile tightening her features. Before I could respond, the man finally closed the distance, his presence overwhelming. "What a small world," he said, his lips curling into a smirk that made my skin crawl. "Lila, can we talk?" "No," she said, firm yet trembling. "There's nothing to say." I could feel the air grow thick again, the fragile shrapnel of our earlier moments shattering as her voice turned cold. But I sensed the weight of something unspoken, a fissure deeper than I understood. "Let's just," I began, stepping closer, ready to stand between them. But Lila's eyes bore into mine, a desperate plea mixed with an undercurrent of something else, fear, yes, but also something raw and painful. "Sam, please. Just give me a moment," she whispered, and there was an urgency to her voice that made my heart ache at the thought of what she might reveal. As the bell jingled again, ushering in another patron, I stepped aside reluctantly, hoping the quiet strength I had found in my moments with Lila would sustain us. A dull ache settled in my bones, the weight of impending calamity shifting in the air. Then, just as the fleeting connection of divided hearts flickered once more, the man leaned in, lowering his voice to a conspiratorial whisper. "I know about your brother, Lila. It's time you faced the truth." My stomach dropped, a cold wave of dread washing over me, drowning out the warmth of the diner and the hopeful flicker of camaraderie ignited by Maggie just moments before. What revelation could shatter the delicate world we were starting to build? What darkness had Lila kept hidden under her brave face? As the man's words echoed between us, the piece of hope that flourished within the spring of our connection began to wilt, as the fog of uncertainty thickened around us. I didn't know how to fight this battle, but I realized with a jolt that I had to. I had to know the truth for Lila, for me, for the chance of love that flickered against the odds. The air in the diner thickened like molasses as the man's words hung over us, a specter of dread that wrapped tightly around Lila's heart. Her eyes, usually so vibrant and full of unspoken concerns, dulled momentarily, reflecting an unfathomable sorrow that struck a chord deep within me. I wanted to reach out, to grab her hand and anchor her, but I could only stand there, paralyzed by a mix of rage and helplessness. "Get away from her," I ground out, my voice a low growl, laced with warning. I could feel the tension coiling between us like a rattlesnake ready to strike. The man's smirk widened, unfazed by my rage. "You really think you can protect her from the truth?" His voice oozed condescension, further igniting the fire in my chest. But Lila lifted her chin defiantly, her quiet bravery igniting a flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, she had a weapon of her own, courage. "Sam, it's okay," she said, though her voice trembled slightly. I need to hear what he has to say." Her gaze locked onto mine, and in that moment, something inside me broke. How could she be so calm in the face of this looming tempest? I nodded slowly, feeling the gravity of her request. But agreeing only deepened the pit that churned in my stomach. In this moment, despite my urge to protect her from everything that would hurt her, I understood that she needed control over her own story, even if it unfolded in a way I desperately wished to shield her from. "Lila," I whispered again, pleading with my eyes for her to reconsider. But the way she squared her shoulders told me her mind was made up. The man straightened, his posture shifting from predator to a serpentine sort of hunter, ready to strike. "Your brother, he's not who you think he is." He paused, letting the weight of his words settle in the air, prickling the hairs on the back of my neck. "Truth is, Lila, he's been hiding from something, from someone." She recoiled slightly but quickly regained her composure, steeling herself against his insinuations, though a flicker of doubt crossed her features. "What do you know about my brother? He's not a bad person. Isn't he? Or has that only been your dream? You've spent so long living in his shadow, haven't you? Chasing after illusions." His voice sliced through her words, relentless. The din of the diner faded into the background as my heart raced. I could see Lila grappling with revelations poking at the fragile walls she had built around herself, walls I wasn't even sure I could breach. "Enough." I blurted out, my voice trembling with emotion. "Why are you doing this? What do you gain from tearing her down?" My stomach roiled as I confronted this specter of her past. "Because," he said, lowering his voice again, thick with malice, "it's time she knows how deep the rabbit hole goes." Before I could respond, panic twisted in Lila's eyes. "Stop!" she shouted suddenly, her brave facade beginning to crack just under the surface. "Just tell me what you know." The man paused, seemingly pleased by this reaction, savoring the moment as if he were a gnarled storyteller about to divulge a long-hidden secret. "Your brother's been in trouble, Lila. Deep trouble. I know where he is hiding, and I know who's looking for him. If you ever want to see him again." His voice trailed off, a suggestive glimmer in his eyes carrying a weight that made my pulse quicken. There was a negotiation wrapped in his words, an unsaid threat. "Stop it." Lila's voice broke, fear lacing through her. She took a step back, her brownie forgotten on the counter. "You don't know anything. Don't I?" He pressed, stepping closer, invading her space as shadows flitted around us. "He made choices, Lila. Choices that put you directly in the crosshairs." The revelation hung over her like a storm cloud ready to unleash devastation. My heart squeezed painfully, unable to bear the sights of worry and despair played starkly across her face. "What choices?" she whispered, and I could scarcely breathe as I felt the tremor of her vulnerability in that fragile question, but before the man could answer, a loud crash erupted from the far end of the diner. A couple of rambunctious teenagers had knocked over a table in laughter, the sound cutting through the tense silence. It drew a moment of startled attention from all corners of the room, a distraction I desperately needed. "Leave," I said to the man, quiet but firm. I felt my heart racing, the full weight of protecting Lila crashing over me like a tidal wave. The man observed me, his expression warring between amusement and derision, but the moment broke before he could retaliate. He straightened, smirk returning, and began to back away, his eyes never leaving Lila. Just remember, this isn't over. The truth has a way of surfacing, Lila. As he melted back into the diner's shadows, the reality of what had just transpired settled over us like a shroud. The chatter resumed, the clatter of forks against plates masking the remnants of our mounting turmoil. But for Lila, the cavernous space that had just opened between us seemed even more insurmountable. "Sam," she breathed, and my insides twisted at the desperation tinging her voice. I stepped forward, drawn by an unyielding need to console her, but she recoiled slightly. "Please," she said, shaking her head. Her eyes glistened with unshed tears as she stared at the counter, her heart visibly fractured. "I need to think." Before I could protest, she turned away, walking to the edge of the diner where the bright neon lights cast long shadows. My heart wrenched, feeling like I was standing at the edge of a cliff. Behind us, the laughter and chatter resumed, oblivious to the pain that churned in our small world. What had I done? What path had I unknowingly set her on? As I watched her retreat, a terrible panic seized me, an understanding blooming that something far deeper than the man's threats lay ahead. I needed to find a way to unravel this truth she was being pulled into, even as my own fears clawed at the edges of my mind. "Lila." I called out, but my voice barely pierced the din. She hesitated, just a moment, but then continued towards the door. My heart thudded painfully in my chest. I could feel the way our connection, our burgeoning love, teetered on the precipice of unraveling beneath unspeakable truths. Little did I know, the shockwaves of her brother's secret and the mysterious danger lurking behind it would soon converge, spiraling us deeper into a darkness neither of us had anticipated. And as I took a step forward, desperate to bridge the growing chasm, something whispered deep within me: I had to uncover the bones buried in her past before we could ever hope for a future. The diner felt like a world unto itself, encapsulating us in a fragile bubble of ordinary life, the clinking of dishes, soft murmurs, and the occasional burst of laughter. Yet for Lila and me, it had morphed into a battleground, a symptom of the deep-seated turmoil that had erupted so suddenly. As I hesitated, hoping she might turn around, all I could see was the graceful arch of her back as she moved toward the exit, her shoulders slumping under the weight of unspoken fears. My heart pulsed with a fierce desperation. I could let her go, watch her drift into the unknown, or I could chase after her, through the chaos and confusion, and hold on tightly to the one thing that mattered, her. Lila. The name burst from my lips, propelled by a surge of emotion that felt both foreign and vital. She paused again but didn't turn. The fear gripping her heart carved stark lines on her face as the breath caught in my throat. "Please, don't leave. We can figure this out together." I could see her natural instinct to retreat battling against the urge to run and find safety rooted in our tangled pasts. With painstaking slowness, she turned back to face me, the neon light from the sign behind her casting an ethereal glow on her features. I took a step closer, the distance between us charged and electric, like the air before a storm. "Sam," she began, her voice trembling, as if she were testing the boundaries of her hope. "I don't know what to think right now. Everything I believed about my brother, what if it's all a lie?" The words tumbled out, raw and heavy, as tears pooled in her eyes like a wellspring of hurt. "Lila," I said softly, inching toward her. "I know this is terrifying. I can't pretend to understand what you're feeling, but you're not alone in this." I searched for the right words to quell the turmoil, to let her know that I would stand beside her no matter the weight of the truth. "Whatever happens, I'll be here." But her gaze fell to the ground, as memories both painful and beautiful swirled behind her eyes, clouds of doubt obscuring the brighter moments we had shared. "He's my brother, Sam. He's always protected me. I can't just turn my back on him now." But what if he's not who I thought? What if— "Stop," I interrupted gently, drawing closer, wanting to ground her. "You have to take one step at a time. You can't let this man's words dictate your choices. We'll find the truth together." The uncertainty in her eyes flickered briefly with a hint of warmth, like a timid flame, before receding again. And what if that truth is something I can't handle? She whispered, the raw uncertainty slicing through the air. Then we'll handle it, Lila, I replied, reaching out to touch her hand, igniting the familiar warmth I cherished. A comforting connection flowed between us, but it was fragile, as if every pulse threatened to shatter the tenuous bond we had formed. Before she could respond, the bell above the diner door jingled, pulling our attention away from the storm brewing in our hearts. A young girl, no older than 10, darted in with her mother, grasping a bright blue balloon that bobbed cheerfully in the air. I watched as the girl's laughter filled the room, a stark contrast to the anguish that clung to us. Look, Mommy. There's an ice cream truck outside. Can we get some? Her innocent joy momentarily dulled the edges of our predicament. In that moment, something sparked inside me, a hope that perhaps still existed between the shadows of uncertainty. See that? I nodded towards the girl, pulling Lila's gaze. There's still light in this world, even when life feels unbearably heavy. A small smile flickered across Lila's face before dissolving again, her gaze growing distant. The laughter of the girl seemed to break a part of the wall around her heart, even if just for an instant. What if, she murmured thoughtfully, what if we don't want the same things? What if it leads me away from you? Lila, I breathed, the weight of her words slipping through my fingers like grains of sand. We'll find a way through this. I believe in us. Just as I thought we were on the brink of breaking through the unyielding facade she wore like armor, the man reappeared at the door, leaning casually against the frame, mischief lighting up his eyes. The casualness that dripped from his presence sent cold chills racing down my spine. Ah, there you are. He smiled with a predatory edge, catching both of our gazes. I see you've decided to keep her company. Before I could react, he took a step forward, drawing Lila's focus back to him like a moth to the flame. Lila, he said, his voice dripping with insincerity, you should know I'm not the only one looking for your brother. You'll want to be careful. My pulse quickened, adrenaline surging through me as Lila's expression morphed from confusion to horror. The weight of his insinuation slipped through the air like a toxin, suffocating us both. What do you mean? She demanded, her defiance sparking anew, but I could see the cracks in her facade darkening by the second. Just remember, sweet Lila, he said, his lips curling into a cruel smile. You might want to know where your loyalty lies. Can you follow your brother's trail without losing your way? Before I could push through the rising tide of fear and anger boiling within me, he turned, slipping away into the night like a shadow, leaving us reeling in the aftermath of his words. For a heartbeat, the world around us spun, the laughter and chatter of the diner drowning beneath the weight of his warning. Lila's body trembled, and I took a step closer, wrapping my arms around her as her fears swirled like a tempest, drawing her further into a nightmare I had hoped to shield her from. In that moment, all I could do was hold her close, feeling her small frame shudder against me, as a heartbroken waitress far removed from the chaos gripped my hand tightly. Together, we were caught on the precipice of an unknown storm, the shadows of her brother's secret threatening to engulf us both. And as I gazed into her conflicted eyes, I realized, with a swift certainty, that our lives had just taken a turn into darkness that neither of us could have anticipated. The diner was no longer a refuge, it had transformed into a suffocating chamber where shadows loomed larger than our hopes. With Lila clinging to me, her small frame shaking beneath the weight of her brother's threat, I couldn't shake the gnawing anxiety that twisted in my gut. The world around us blurred into a gray haze, and it felt as if time itself had stilled in the wake of the man's taunting words. Sam, Lila whispered against my chest, her voice barely audible over the muffled chatter of diners. What do I do? Her question hung in the air, heavy and heart-wrenching, like a blade poised above fragile truth. I glanced around, desperate to find solace or a hint of guidance among the faces of strangers, but all I could see were reflections of uncertainty. We'll figure it out, I assured her, my own resolve feeling hollow as it echoed back. I had to believe that we could navigate through this, that we weren't set adrift in an unforgiving sea. Maybe he's right, Lila choked out, drawing back to look into my eyes. What if I end up losing everything? My brother, our chances no, Lila, I interrupted softly but firmly. You deserve to know the truth, whatever it may be. That's what matters most. Not the fear of losing someone, but the hope of finding yourself. I searched her gaze for a glimpse of the strength I used to know, the girl who danced under the stars when life felt like a dream. As she blinked up at me, I saw the momentary flicker of defiance in her eyes, reminiscent of the girl who used to laugh freely. But the defiance waned as she traced her silent thoughts, the battle within her churning ceaselessly beneath the surface. Suddenly, a small hand tugged at my pant leg, breaking the tension. I looked down to find the young girl from earlier standing beside us, her balloon floating joyfully above her head. "Excuse me, mister," she said, her eyes wide and curious. "Is everything okay? You looked sad." In that innocent moment, a fragile thread of warmth wound its way around my heart. How could this child see through our despair so easily? "It's just a little complicated right now," I replied, kneeling so we were eye to eye. "But thank you for caring." The girl smiled cheerfully and extended her balloon toward Lila. "You can have it if you want. It's blue, my favorite color, and it makes me happy when I feel sad." Lila's eyes widened in disbelief, and for a heartbeat, she seemed to forget the turmoil swirling around her. "That's very sweet of you," I interjected, motioning for her to take the balloon. When Lila's fingers grazed the string, it felt as if a warm ray of sunshine pierced the gloom for just an instant. "I'm not sad anymore," the girl proclaimed, her voice ringing with an undeniable joy. "I have a balloon and a blue dress. And you can be happy too." The girl's exuberance was infectious. Lila couldn't help but smile as she fiddled with the bright string in her hand. It was a small moment, but it felt monumental amid the storm of uncertainty that threatened to drown us both. "Thank you," Lila finally said, her voice soft as she knelt to the girl's eye level. "Really, thank you." The little girl beamed up at her. "You have to keep smiling. Just like my balloon, you know. Even if it flies away, it'll still belong to me." With that, she turned and scampered back to her mother, laughter bubbling from her as they left the diner. Lila and I exchanged a glance, the reverberations of the girl's words bouncing around the cavern of our hearts. Yes, even if the shadows grew around us, there was a flicker of light that could spark in unexpected places. "She's right," I murmured, "we can still find a way through the darkness." But just as that thought solidified, another figure intruded upon our fragile moment. This time, it was the waitress, the heartbroken woman hovering in the background, her fingers trembling against the edge of the counter. I heard what he said, she interjected quietly, pain etched across her features. "About your brother. If you're serious about finding him or about whatever truth may come from this, I can help you." Lila looked at her, confusion and suspicion etched in her voice. "How? Why would you even want to help us?" The waitress inhaled deeply, her eyes glistened with a blurred, guarded sadness. "Because I know what it feels like to lose someone to darkness. And sometimes, the only way to get through it is by leaning on others who understand." She paused, her eyes locked onto Lila's. "I know places, people. I can show you how to dig deeper without getting lost yourself." Lila hesitated, caught between trepidation and a flicker of hope, but I sensed that the darkness Lila faced could not be borne alone. There was something in the warmth of the waitress's offer that felt genuine, a lifeline amidst our tangled reality. "Okay," Lila said finally, her voice stealing. "Let us do this." I felt my chest tighten. It was a decision that would either tether us desperately together or drive us apart into uncertainty. But deep down, ties were beginning to unravel, and a choice lingered before us, a choice that could redefine everything we thought we knew. And as the waitress began to outline her idea, a horrible realization hit me, unraveling my heart once more. What truth could we uncover about Lila's brother that darkness might expose in her? Would the bond we shared withstand the truth, or would it tear us apart irrevocably? As the shadows deepened, so did my fear. The trap was closing around us, and with every word, we inched closer to an unknown fate. The storm was gathering, and we stood on the brink of a revelation that could change everything, for better or worse. The air outside the diner was crisp, the kind that bit at your skin but felt invigorating against the backdrop of the heaviness we had just endured. Lila took a deep breath, her fingers still playing with the blue balloon, a physical manifestation of the flicker of hope ignited by the little girl's innocence. I didn't know if it was the cold or the conversation unfolding inside me, but a tremor pulsed at the edge of my resolve. "Are you ready?" I asked her, trying to mask my unease. The choice we had made to follow the waitress felt monumental, but uncertainty loomed ahead like an incoming storm cloud. Lila nodded, though her gaze lingered on the ground, her silence telling 1,000 stories. Fears whispered at the corners of my mind. What if we dug too deep and unearthed not just truths but also irreparable scars? "Let us go then," I said, breaking the silence that threatened to shackle us in our turmoil. As we turned to follow the waitress, I couldn't shake off the worsening grip of dread that curled around my chest. The waitress led us away from the diner, weaving through narrow alleyways and faded storefronts that seemed to murmur secrets of their own. There was an urgency in her steps, a determination I couldn't comprehend. As we walked, I became acutely aware of the way Lila's hand clutched the balloon, its bright color a stark contrast to the dying daylight. "You're very brave," I whispered to her, hoping to draw her focus back to something other than the shadows we were about to face. She didn't meet my gaze but nodded slightly, her own courage flickering like a dying flame. A few blocks later, we arrived at a small community center that looked as if it had once been a lively gathering space but now appeared to wear its neglect like a faded coat. The waitress paused at the steps, glancing back at us with an intensity that shook loose the unease rattling in my bones. "This is it," she said softly. "Inside, you'll find people who can help, people who know what it means to fight darkness." Lila swallowed, her fear palpable. What if there's nothing left to find?" "Then at least you'll know," the waitress replied, her voice steady. "Sometimes, knowing brings its own kind of healing." With that, she pushed open the door, and the hinges creaked in protest. The room inside hummed with a muted energy. People sat in clusters, their faces etched with stories that mirrored the burdens in our hearts. And the atmosphere, though heavy, felt less suffocating than the diner. In here, pain was palpable yet shared, each person's journey threading through others in a web of understanding. That I followed Lila as she stepped inside, her expression shifting as she took in the scene around her. We joined a small group where the waitress introduced us. "This is Lila and Sam. They're looking for guidance, a way to find the truth without losing themselves." The murmurs of encouragement filled the room, and though Lila appeared hesitant, something shifted in her demeanor, as if she was tethering herself to the warmth of connection. In that moment, I felt a small spark of hope ignite in the void we had been spiraling through. An older woman with silver-streaked hair extended her hand toward Lila. "Sweetheart, sometimes the journey is scarier than the destination. We're here to walk alongside you." Tears brimmed in Lila's eyes as she squeezed the woman's hand, a tiny gesture that spoke volumes. "Thank you," she whispered, softness cutting through the edges of her vulnerability. But then, as laughter began to replace the solemnity and we found small moments of camaraderie through shared stories, a sudden shout shattered the fragile bubble of hope. "Heard you're looking for answers." A man burst through the door, wild-eyed and panting, sending a wave of tension surge through the room. Faces turned toward him, some wary, others intrigued. I exchanged a worried glance with Lila, sensing her apprehension radiate like a palpable force. Could this man be a harbinger of truth, or a harbinger of something even darker? "Who are you?" someone from the back called, skepticism fretting loudly through their tone. "I know where her brother is," he shouted, urgency snaking through each word like a storm brewing on the horizon. "He is alive, but it's worse than you think." The darkness. He paused, his breath coming in quick bursts. "It's entangled deep, and you may not like what you find." The room fell into a charged silence, the weight of his words hanging heavy. Lila looked at me, fear and determination dancing in her gaze. This was at the precipice of everything we'd been searching for, yet the truth he hinted at felt jagged and dangerous. "Wait!" I called out, trying to grasp the threads of control slipping through my fingers. What do you mean? The man stepped forward, his eyes wild and pleading. I'm trying to save you from what I saw. The truth has a way of destroying what little light you think you have left. As his unfinished thought loomed in the air, I felt the world spin violently, an ugly truth crashing upon us like waves against a cliff. Would we venture forth into darkness, or pull back to preserve the fragile bonds we were only beginning to form? Lila's grip on her balloon tightened, a small, defiant act against the looming shadows, yet I knew deep down that a choice had been thrust upon us, one that would either illuminate our path or consume us entirely. The tension in the air was palpable, each breath feeling heavier than the last as the man's wild eyes bore into us. Lila's fingers trembled around the balloon string, its color suddenly feeling like a cruel mockery against the haunting uncertainty in the room. I wanted to shield her from this man, from his words that threatened to unravel the fragile sense of safety we had found. Yet, a flicker of curiosity ignited within me. What if this was the answer we needed? Please, just tell us what you know, I urged, attempting to find some semblance of calm as I looked into the faces surrounding us. Their curiosity was a silent agreement that we were all in this together, caught in a web woven with fear and hope. The man nodded, taking a moment to gather himself, his breath returning to a more steady rhythm. Your brother, there are things about his disappearance, about what he's been pulled into, that you want to believe. But it's the truth, and it's real. His words hung like a ghost, lingering between what was and what could become. The collective breath of the room seemed to catch as Lila stepped forward, her balloon bobbing against the tension, a small act of rebellion. Just tell me, where is he? She demanded, her voice a soft yet fierce whisper that cut through the noise. He jerked his head slightly, glancing to the side as if weighing the cost of his next revelation. He has been taken by them. They call themselves the brokers. It's a network of lost souls converting pain into profit. They use people like pawns. I bristled at his words, the sound of them igniting a deep-rooted protectiveness inside me. You're saying that someone might be using him? It's worse than that, he continued, his eyes darting around the room, assessing the growing empathy and fear around us. They prey on despair, feeding off the heartaches of families. They lure you in with promises of hope, but it's all a facade. Lila's face paled, and suddenly the room felt stifling, her usual light dimming. You're saying there's no way to save him? No, the man countered quickly, his earnestness shining through the haze of desperation. But rescuing him could change everything. He holds a key to something bigger, something they don't want to be discovered. As he spoke, the calming presence of soft conversations around us faded into a muffled hum, replaced by the rising cadence of my heartbeat and the biting edges of dread sinking into Lila's expression. This was escalating quickly. What did it mean for us? The older woman who had first taken Lila's hand attempted to step forward, sensing the growing panic. We can help you, sweet girl. Whatever it is, we'll figure it out together. But before Lila could respond, the man's face darkened, his voice growing taut. You don't understand. They aren't just shadows you can chase and hope to catch, they're hunters, ruthless and cunning. Pursuing them could become your own downfall. A shudder passed through the audience, and in that moment, I felt Lila's heartbeat aligning with the low rumble of anxiety swirling around us. We can't just do nothing, she whispered, looking so small, clutching that bright balloon like a lifeline. I won't lose him to people like that. Just as the weight of despair threatened to overwhelm the room, a soft voice chimed in from near the back, a teenage girl, her eyes wide with a painful understanding. This happened to my sister. We found out too late. Please, don't wait until it's too late for you too. A heavy silence followed, transforming into a shared pain that wove through our collective stories. Strangers haunted by similar wounds offered each other solace, yet the fear tugged at us all. What action could possibly feel right when the stakes were so high? The man's gaze softened briefly as he caught a glimpse of Lila clinging to that balloon, a symbol of her last shred of innocence. You have to be willing to lose everything if you want to uncover the truth. But beware, this journey doesn't merely expose the darkness, it forces you to confront it within yourself. I stepped in front of Lila. shielding her as much as I could from the weight of his words. "We didn't come here to find death, we came searching for his life, and Lila's courage is worth fighting for." Lila glanced at me, determination swirling within her eyes like storm clouds gathering. "I'm not afraid. I can't be." But just at that moment, the door swung open again, drawing our attention away from the charged atmosphere, only to reveal a figure silhouetted against the dull lights outside, a familiar face causing an electric pulse to shoot through me. Sam. It was just the one person I had wished to shield from this chaos, yet here she was, eyes wide with fear and concern. "What are you doing here?" I asked, my voice tight with concern, wondering how she could be known. "I followed you," she admitted, glancing at Lila before returning her gaze to me. "I had a feeling you'd need backup." But just as relief washed over me, her next words rolled in like thunder. "And I think I know who the brokers are and where to find them." In an instant, a new thread of anxiety pulled tight around my chest. As much as I craved answers, I wasn't prepared for the implications of what this could mean for all of us, or what we would be stepping into. The emotional descent was vertical, and panic began to bubble in my throat. Lila clutched the balloon even harder, her heart just as heavy as mine, and as the reality of it all set in, I couldn't help but wonder, would this chance encounter lead us to healing, or would it unlock a darkness that would consume us whole? The air thickened with tension as Jess stepped further into the dimly lit room. I could see the fear in her eyes, a mirror of our own anxieties. Each heartbeat echoed in my ears as I grappled with both relief and dread. "What do you mean you think you know who they are?" I managed to ask, my throat dry, the weight of our collective turmoil pressing down on me. She took a deep breath, collecting her thoughts amid the chaos. "I overheard some of the guys at the diner talking about a group looking for recruits. They mentioned the brokers, how they lure people in with these club-like meetings, disguising their true intentions." The realization hung heavily in the air. Lila's balloon slipped from her fingers, floating aimlessly upwards as if trying to escape our reality, and my stomach twisted. The gravity of Jess's revelation loomed larger than before. "And where can we find them?" I pressed, urgency sharpening my voice. Jess's brows knitted in thought as she glanced around at the faces in the room, each one reflecting a flicker of hope tainted by fear. "I think they operate out of the old warehouse by the river. That's where I heard they're holding their next meeting." The man who had originally drawn us into this whirlwind shifted, leaning slightly towards us. "Going there is dangerous. They have eyes everywhere. Once you're in their realm, there's no guarantee you'll come out unscathed." But Lila, her resolve strengthening with every passing moment, looked straight at Jess. "We have to try. I can't just sit here and do nothing. My brother deserves that. He deserves to be found." The room fell into hushed murmurs, the weight of her words resonating deeply within everyone, including me. We were standing on the edge of something profound, an act of bravery or folly, depending on how you looked at it. My heart raced, compass spinning wildly. I turned to Jess, trying to gauge her confidence in the plan. "Are you sure about this?" Jess nodded slowly, determination filling her eyes. "I'd never put you in harm's way unless I thought we had a real chance. If they're recruiting, it might be the perfect way to get close without raising any suspicion." There was an electric charge, the potential for hope palpable, but the lurking dread underneath felt insurmountable. I felt a sense of duty to keep Lila safe, yet I also knew I couldn't dissuade her from this path she had chosen. The duality of wanting to protect her while supporting her unyielding courage gnawed at my conscience, and then, out of nowhere, that teenage girl from before, who had quieted the room with her sorrowful story, stepped forward again. "I can help you," she offered earnestly. "I know my sister's pain. I know how they function. I can show you how to endure." Her eyes sparkled with conviction, an unexpected ally in the midst of our plight. My gaze fell upon Lila, her expression a blend of disbelief and gratitude. This small gesture offered a fleeting glimpse of hope. The realization struck me then we weren't alone in this darkness. We were bound by shared heartbreak, forged together by a raw need to reclaim our loved ones from the clutches of despair. Thank you, Lila whispered to her, the promise of solidarity wrapping around us like a fragile shield. We will find a way. The clock on the wall ticked ominously, pulling my thoughts into the future. What awaited us in that warehouse? Would we end up just like the others, lost, consumed, or would we survive this tangle of shadows long enough to locate and rescue the ones we cared for? As we began to map out the details, another wave of uncertainty washed over me. The courage we felt was intertwined with the fear of our next steps, a dance of light and dark playing out in the faint glow of our intentions. Just as I allowed myself to feel that spark of camaraderie, the door swung open once more. This time, the figure that entered toppled my hopes like dominoes. It was Diana, the silent mother of the girl who had spoken earlier, her face drawn and weary. I need to talk to you all now. The urgency in her voice clashed with the fragile hopes we had just started to build. Confusion rippled through us as we waited for her to continue, my heart thudding in my chest. What news would she bring, and would it shatter what little resolve we still held? As silence enveloped the room, I felt the weight of impending doom settle heavily upon my shoulders. Whatever Diana had to say felt insurmountable, and in that moment, a cold shiver of foreboding washed over me, transforming the flicker of determination into a jagged edge uncertainty. What if, at the end of this journey, we weren't fighting for hope but inviting a deeper despair into our lives? Diana's presence seemed to freeze the air in the room, the weight of her sorrow pressing down like a thick fog. Jess, Lila, and the others held their breath, waiting for the storm of words to burst forth. I could see the mother's hands trembling, gripping tightly to the edges of her worn-out jacket, as if it were the last barrier between her and the vulnerability that lay beneath. Please, just tell us, Jess urged, her voice steady but laced with anxiety. What is going on? Diana's eyes shimmered with unshed tears, and my heart ached seeing the raw anguish written across her features. It's about the brokers. She paused, as if gathering herself, and then continued, they're not just targeting people. They're consuming them. I overheard them talking. People have been disappearing, and it's not what they claim. Once you're in their grasp, they don't let you go. My stomach plummeted at the words. The notion that these brokers fed off of our loved ones' despair, that they thrived on this nightmare, was more than I could bear. Lila's eyes widened, the fight draining from her face as she absorbed the weight of Diana's confession that we had hoped for answers, perhaps even a sliver of hope, but this revelation laid bare the monstrous reality we were up against. But we need to find them. They might have something to lead us to my brother. Lila's voice trembled, though I could see her struggle to hold on to hope. Diana shook her head slowly. I know that desire, the need to fight. But rushing in blindly will only make you vulnerable. I can help, but you must understand this isn't just a rescue mission. It's a battle against something we still don't fully comprehend. In that moment, I felt a flicker of frustration ignite within me, not at Diana, but at our situation, which felt increasingly hopeless with each word. The flickering candle of our camaraderie started to dim as the darkness from Diana's revelation settled over us. What do you suggest we do then? I asked, trying to choke back the wave of fear cresting inside me. We can't just wait for them to come to us. Lila needs to know. Diana stepped forward, her expression fierce. We can gather information. There are whispers among the lost. People who have survived, who know things. But we have to approach carefully. Trust only extends so far, and the brokers will punish anyone who poses a threat. Just as she finished, the teenage girl from earlier page, I remembered her name now, interrupted, her voice tinged with urgency. I can go with you, Diana. I know a place where people talk about what happens to those who join the brokers. It's not safe, but I can lead you. Just let me help. My heart warmed slightly at her bravery. The innocent spark of youthful determination clashed with the weight of despair lingering in the air. It made me realize how deeply we were all intertwined, how this chaotic moment had forged a solidarity among us. I turned to Lila, her eyes wary but ignited with newfound determination. What do you think? If we hesitate, we risk losing your brother and everyone else. She nodded slowly, the decision coiling in her chest like a tightly wound spring. Yes. We have to find them, but we can't go in blind. I trust Diana. We need to listen. Suddenly, the room was engulfed in a cacophony of footsteps echoing from the hallway. The door rattled violently as someone began pounding on it. My heart raced as I glanced back at Diana, who stepped instinctively to shield Lila behind her. Stay back. Diana commanded, her eyes narrowed, aglow with maternal instinct. The pounding intensified, and then a voice burst through the clamor. Open up. We know you're in there. Panic exploded in my chest. This wasn't just fear of the brokers anymore. Someone was coming for us, and I felt the shadows stretching, dark and unknown. What do we do? Jess whispered, her eyes wide with alarm. Keep quiet, Diana whispered sharply, her composure surprising me. They can't know we're here. But the pounding continued, and panic rippled through our group. Would it be the brokers? Or perhaps someone unrelated? Seeking something else entirely? Would we face them head-on or risk giving ourselves away? In that swirling uncertainty, my thoughts raced. How far had we already fallen in this chaotic entanglement? Would we emerge victorious, or was this a moment we would come to dread as the tipping point leading to our undoing? The door burst open, and an unfamiliar face emerged through the shadows, one I never imagined I would see again. A heartbroken waitress named Emma, holding a blood-stained letter in her trembling hands, her expression marred by distress. At that moment, faced with the giant wave of dread crashing down on us, I knew one thing for certain: nothing would ever be the same again. I never anticipated that the revelations would come crashing down like the thunder that rattled the night sky, but here we stood, hearts bared and souls entwined in the tempest of truth. Emma's presence was an interlude in this fragile stage where I found Lila, Jess, Diana, and even Paige momentarily paralyzed in fear, waiting for the next wave of chaos to hit us. Sam, Lila, Emma gasped, words tumbling from her quivering lips like raindrops from the storm clouds gathering above. I need to show you this. She held up the letter with trembling fingers, flaring the tension that buzzed in the room, a live wire threatening to snap. What's that? I asked, though I feared the answer might unravel what semblance of certainty we had just begun to forge. It's from him. Lila's brother, she managed, her voice cracking under the weight of the revelation. The room erupted in hushed astonishment, the quiet tension morphing into a chorus of anxiety that clutched at our throats. Lila stepped forward instinctively, a beacon drawn to its light amidst the gathered shadows. Where did you find this? She pressed, disbelief ricocheting in her voice. The crushing silence swallowed the question as Emma took a step closer, her eyes glimmering with a mix of fear and resolution. I found it in the back of the diner, tucked away in a place no one would think to look. It was addressed to you, Lila. He wanted you to know he was alive. Lila reached for the letter, fingers grazing its surface like it held the essence of her brother's spirit. My stomach twisted again, caught in a painful knots. Could this be the answer to the whirling doubts that had plagued her heart? Would this lead us back to him? To light? But Emma's expression twisted into something darker, reminiscent of all the heartache we had chased. But there's something else, she warned, her voice low, tinged with urgency. He says that they're watching him. The brokers. They know you're looking for him. The statement hung in the air, heavy and oppressive. And they'll do anything to stop you. Lila clutched the letter to her chest, eyes wide and afraid, and I could feel my own heart racing alongside hers, the precarious balance of hope against dread threatening to tip us into chaos. We have to go to him. We can't let them win, she said, a fierce determination sparking in her voice once more. The atmosphere surged with electricity as Diana stepped in closer, her protective instincts reigniting. We have to plan carefully. We can't just rush in blind, we need to gather more intelligence about where he is and how to get him out. Time is not on our side. We have to find the warehouse. Jess interjected, voice steady and unwavering, her eyes betraying the tension that had settled firmly within her. If he's right about the brokers, we can't wait any longer. We have to make our move now. By now, Emma had quieted, retreating into the shadows as the weight of her message settled over us like a cold blanket, her eyes weary, filled with unspoken fear. I can help lead you there. I know the back roads to avoid detection. I've worked there long enough to understand their routines. Lila looked at me, her expression a cocktail of dread and resoluteness. At that moment, something broke free within me, a fierce determination ignited at the prospects of taking back control of our lives, of chasing down the shadows of fear that threatened to engulf us entirely. If we do this, we do it together. No one gets left behind, I said, sending a glance around the group, gathering strength from our shared pain and desperate hope. As we prepared ourselves to plunge into the darkness, memories flooded back to me, little echoes of what this had once meant, the courage, the laughter, even the dreams that felt light as feather. But now, my heart thrummed with urgency as the uncharted path unfurled before us. In that moment of stillness before the storm, Lila and I locked eyes, a silent agreement passing between us, vowing to protect what remained of our fractured hearts. Whatever happens next, I whispered, I won't let you go. We stepped forward together, bolstered by the sense of belonging forged among our shared scars. The weight of Emma's revelation lingered, yet beneath it, we had built a fragile web of solidarity that dared to face the world with unyielding strength. As our makeshift party prepared to leave, manipulation of shadows grew behind us like a darkness that shivered at the edge of our reality. Outside, the air crackled with energy, the scent of rain mingling with the rising tension. We were stepping out into the unknown, each of us tethered to the light of the connections we had formed, preparing to dive deeper into the depths of despair but resolute in the knowledge that together, we would find a way to illuminate the truths we had sought for far too long. With Lila beside me, holding on to that balloon as if it were a tether to hope, we took our first steps into the storm, ready to embrace our entwinement with the shadows, prepared to unveil the truth that lay ahead. In that moment of unity, I could feel the world shift. It was exhilarating and terrifying, but we were finally ready to face whatever darkness awaited us, and as we set off, I could only think no matter how far we wandered, I had to cling to her with everything I had, for even the fleeting moments of light needed the strength of a heart connected to fight against the impending shadows. We'll find him, I promised her, feeling the surge of hope between us. It was a truth that might just be our saving grace. The truth will set us free, Lila echoed softly, a mantra threading through the chaos, a radiant pulse that echoed as we stepped into the unknown. And together, we walked into the storm, hand in hand, unwilling to let the darkness define us, vowing instead to reclaim our light, to face whatever lay ahead together, and that, I realized, was where the true journey lay, not just in finding her brother, but in finding ourselves amid all the chaos, a truth more powerful than fear itself, a bond that cracked the very facade of despair.